Here we are. We're live in the second hour on the early line on this Tuesday on SportsGrid. He is Donnie. I am Ben. You just heard from Rick Horrow that he'll be out there in Las Vegas next week for all the Super Bowl 58 festivities. So will we. Bright and early on a Monday morning, we will be live to take you through all that you need to know for Super Bowl Sunday and that Super Bowl 54 rematch between the Chiefs and the 49ers, this time out in Las Vegas at Super Bowl 58. So, Donnie, as we look at the Super Bowl 58 odds, we correlate what we are seeing right now in the game numbers to those Super Bowl MVP odds here for Super Bowl 58 as well. As we have shared, it's a very short spread. It's 1.5 in favor of San Francisco. When we spoke yesterday, it was minus 118 money line for the 49ers, even money plus 100 for KC. A little bit later in the afternoon, it was minus 112 and minus 104, only 8 cents of difference. Now that money line is working a little bit more back to San Francisco at minus 124, plus 106 other side for the Chiefs. The total remains at 47.5. Whatever way you slice it, it is expected to be as competitive of a game as you could hope for in the final football game of an NFL season on the Super Bowl stage. But, Donnie, because we have 12 days to dive into every single angle and react to what we are seeing, getting ready for Super Bowl Sunday in Las Vegas, do you make anything of the couple of cents we have seen in the money line movement over the past 24 hours?
Just normal flow, and you see this a lot, Ben, right? You see the opening numbers at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's just say the San Francisco 49ers at a 2.5 price, immediately bought down here in the favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, even though it's only a point and a half move, some people have been waiting and say, great, I didn't like it at 2.5 or maybe let's just say 3 at that point, but I do like the San Francisco 49ers. I'll now jump in at minus 1s and minus 1.5s, which makes some sense for that buyback here. The one thing we have to understand also, and sometimes it's hard to quantify, and you're watching it play out, Ben, in real time. It's the Patrick Mahomes effect. If you line these two football teams up side by side and just say, okay, talent just wins out alone, the 49ers are a touchdown better than the Kansas City Chiefs. I honestly believe that. But when you have the ultimate equalizer at quarterback, the most important position in sport being Patrick Mahomes, this is what you get here. So we'll start out the conversations once again as they've been going all the way through this early week. It's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes, and even harder now to see that he's just going through football teams that he's supposedly an underdog to beat and winning those games, no matter how ugly, no matter how pretty it is on offense. The one thing that's hard to do, beat Patrick Mahomes in any instance here.
Listen, Donnie, I think this Kansas City Chiefs team is different than the previous 5 that we had seen also make an AFC Championship, or the previous 3 that have reached this Super Bowl Sunday stage. But there is no doubt that the common denominators remain in Kansas City. Andy Reid at the helm, Patrick Mahomes offensively, and his favorite target, Travis Kelce, who has reemerged here throughout this postseason run. You could look at Mahomes on Sunday, 30 of 39, 240 yards, and a touchdown, and think, okay, pretty good game for Mahomes. But when he needs to play at his best, he always does. How about the 3rd and 9, 2:19 remaining in regulation? They decide to air it out. He finds Marquez Valdez-Scantling the redemption reception, and that was it, because the Ravens could only stop the clock at the 2-minute warning, and the Chiefs had a new set of downs on the other side. They trust in Mahomes on the most significant spots, and we have seen him deliver time and again. This year's offense has not been nearly as good. Mahomes himself has not been nearly as prolific as the MVP season from a year ago, and yet here they are in a Super Bowl game once again. And Patrick Mahomes, although he is playing as the quarterback for the underdog currently, is the favorite to win Super Bowl 58's MVP at plus 140. 60 cents in front of Brock Purdy, a 2-1 number for the quarterback for the Super Bowl favorites, the San Francisco 49ers, and Christian McCaffrey at plus 450. Donnie, let's start at the top, because there's 3 players right now at a plus 450 price or shorter before you fall all the way off to Travis Kelce at a 21-1 number. How do you examine the top of the Super Bowl 58 MVP odds?
Interesting. That's the best word to use. And the reason I bring that up is let's just go back, 1 week previous, Ben, because here's always the adage in the Super Bowl, right? The superstar player is typically going to get that trophy. Hey, I'm going to Disney World. It's usually a superstar. Very rarely do you see that commercial pop up on the screen like, never even heard of that football player who just won the MVP. We know it's the primetime performances in the biggest moments, and particularly the quarterbacks that usually get it. So what are we taking a look at Super Bowl 58? Patrick Mahomes plus 140 price, followed by Brock Purdy at a 2-1 price. But as I said, that's who's supposed to win it. But let's go back to the NFC AFC Championship games. Hey, Patrick Mahomes, MVP. Really? 240 yards, 1 touchdown pass. Kelce had a monster game and caught that 1 touchdown pass. Maybe he could have won the MVP in that, but it would be hard to pass over Patrick Mahomes. Flip it over to the guy number 2 sitting here for Super Bowl 58, Ben. That's Brock Purdy. Let's rewind back a week ago. 1 touchdown pass for him. 2 touchdowns on the ground for Christian McCaffrey, a legitimate chance that it might not go to a quarterback. And I love the fact that that happened in the AFC NFC Championship game. It's fresh in our minds because if Patrick Mahomes would have won that football game over the Ravens, 275 in the air, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 25 yards rushing, he would get it easy. Or if Brock Purdy, out of those 34 points, threw 3 touchdown passes and then have 3 rushing touchdowns here, he would get it easy. So it starts to open up the imagination on what could possibly take place, because the one thing we do know is Brock Purdy might get close to 300 yards passing, might exceed it, but he's not really that guy that ramps it up with 4 and 5 touchdown passes. We look at the Kansas City Chiefs offense, no longer that high-flying attack that go, yeah, he threw for 360 in that game and only 1 touchdown, but it's still 360 yards. Maybe some other viable options here coming up this week on Super Bowl 58. Looking forward to that.
So let me ask you a 2-part question. AFC Championship game, the Chiefs win 17-10 outright as an underdog in Baltimore. If there was an AFC title game MVP award, who do you think wins it?
Well, honestly, I probably would go Travis Kelce last week, to be honest. Surpassing Jerry Rice in that football game, and as well getting 10 catches. What did he get? 11 targets, 10 catches in that game, I believe it was, or something similar to there. Over 100 yards. Yeah, it would have been him. It would have been him for me. Yeah.
11 grabs on 11 targets, 116 yards, and a touchdown. The only touchdown Patrick Mahomes threw. 116 of the 241 Mahomes had through the air. But again, the fact we even kind of debate it, although I would agree it would be Travis Kelce, says just how significant of a game a wide receiver or a tight end has to outdo his own quarterback. But I do believe at a 21-1 number, there is some value on Travis Kelce. 2 previous Super Bowls for Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes has won the Super Bowl MVP award. I don't think there's voter fatigue, perhaps, but there is a little bit of fatigue on Kansas City. Now, same question for the NFC Championship game. The Niners win 34-31, do not cover as a 7.5-point home favorite against the Detroit Lions. Who wins the NFC Championship game theoretical MVP award?
I would have gave it to Christian McCaffrey, and also it would have got real interesting as well as you saw that final run, which basically salted the game away from McCaffrey. It landed on his head at the 2-yard line. Let's just say he lands on his head and he's fine. You know what he does, Ben? Gets right back up, goes in that huddle, and punches in his 3rd touchdown of the game. That's what happens here. And also for the 49ers, from their offensive perspective, look, I love Brock Purdy. I think he's a solid quarterback. The weapons at wide receiver and tight end, fantastic. But isn't the best play in football outside the tush push if you're inside the 5 or 6 yard line? Just give it to McCaffrey. Worst case scenario, it takes 2 carries, not 1 carry for him to get into the end zone. But last week, I would give it here, even though we had that Brock Purdy drive where I know he was sensational in the second half, we tend to just look at the statistical output at the end of the game. 130-plus yards there total for McCaffrey, 2 touchdowns. I would have given it to him.
That's what we expect out of Christian McCaffrey. Literally expect. His combo prop was 126.5 rushing plus receiving in the NFC Championship game against Detroit. He had 90 on the ground over his rushing yards prop of 86.5. He had 42 through the air over his receiving yards prop of 35 and a hook and 2 touchdowns. And yet it was the quietest 132 scrimmage yards in a conference title game you might ever see. But again, I give the nod to run CMC. I would agree with you as well. Brock Purdy, the 21-yard scramble on third down late in that fourth quarter to maybe seal the game for San Francisco, to lead to that final score that made it a 10-point margin and a 2-score lead over Detroit was huge. But in the overall component of the game, it is Christian McCaffrey. 6 of the last 10 winners of a Super Bowl MVP award have played quarterback. 10 of the last 14, a quarterback as well. We have seen 2 wide receivers in the last 6 years or so. Cooper Kupp, Super Bowl 56 for the Rams. Julian Edelman, of course, for the New England Patriots. We have seen 2 defenders win it in the last decade as well. Von Miller for the Broncos, Malcolm Smith for the Seattle Seahawks. So let's go to those defenders. Because again, Donnie, this Chiefs team playing in this Super Bowl is different from the team we have seen the last 3 times reach the Super Bowl in the previous 4 seasons. It is defense first. This Chiefs team averages only about 21.5 points per game throughout the regular season. That was 15th out of 32 in the NFL, middle of the pack. Every other year, the Chiefs have averaged better than 28 points per game. That's a top 10 offense. So if it is a game that stays under 47.5 and a Chris Jones continues to make plays, or L'Jarius Sneed stands up in moments that matter most, as we look at the defensive players in Super Bowl MVP odds, could a Nick Bosa at 100-1, or a Chris Jones at 140-1, or a Fred Warner that anchors that San Francisco defense at 180-1 make any sense to you as a long shot type of play?
Probably more looking along from a defensive prospect from the linebacking position for the San Francisco 49ers. And why did I say that? Look, it's really hard to sack Patrick Mahomes. Even if you get a clean pass rush off there, he's talented enough to either shake out of that, run for a first down, or just smart enough to throw the football away. But if you are taking a look at like a Werner at linebacker, you get an interception. Maybe even you get lucky and get a sack, a forced fumble, 14 tackles. Maybe you take one to the house. I think that builds up because you can look forward to a defender getting an interception and returning it to the house, but you always look at statistics as well. And sometimes when that interception and maybe that defensive touchdown come is a big deal. Fourth quarter game tied 21-21, defender interceptions and runnings it back. He might get it just on that play alone. But I want volume. Like I need to see that big stat line because Chris Jones is a great defensive lineman, but let's be real. He's not making a lot of individual tackles. And if he does get a sack and a half, yeah, that could be big, but a sack, oh, okay, that's nice. But again, a linebacker, 15 tackles, forced fumble, interception, chance of a touchdown here, that could go a long way. So for me, I would be looking at the 49ers linebackers having an impact in this football game as a legitimate chance to possibly take an MVP down from a non-offensive position.
And again, quarterbacks still get the benefit of the doubt. 10 of the 14 recent Super Bowl MVP winners have played quarterback. There is still a really good chance that if the Chiefs win, it is probably Patrick Mahomes, even if Brock Purdy is not outstanding, but good in a Super Bowl 58 victory. He would have the nod to be the Super Bowl 58 MVP. He has played well in the most critical junctures in the 2 playoff wins for the 49ers so far this postseason. We hear from you to round out this second hour on the Western Conference in the NBA next.